We've also got quite a good sort of thread of updates that'll be coming over the next 3 or 4 races. So a lot of hard work going on, but hopefully we will start to see the fruits of that soon.
Hi, I'm Miles and I'm here with Shov to answer your questions about the Miami Grand Prix. First question up from one of our fans. How can Lewis lose so much grip and therefore so much time in that short period of time between Q2 and Q3?
Well, we were pretty pleased with the lap time he did in Q2 and hoping to repeat that in Q3. It wasn't really an issue with the grip initially, and the start of the lap was actually quite good. Now, he was unlucky in that as he came around to turn 11, he got a gust of wind that was from behind, and what that does is it actually drops the amount of downforce on the car quite significantly. So as he went into that corner, he had quite a big oversteer. That then puts temperature in the tyres, and once that temperature's in, that's a very tight, twisty section. There's nowhere for them to cool down, and that's what then causes the loss of grip. So had it not been for the gust of wind, it would have been a better lap for sure. The other thing that cost us was that we only had one new soft tyre by that point. So it wasn't like he could have another go and try and repeat it. So frustrating, because by that point the car was working well for him. He was obviously driving it very well, and a shame that we couldn't repeat that lap when it mattered.
So, Shov, you mentioned we only had one set of softs. Why was that?
Well, everyone goes into the weekend with 6 sets. We had a look in FP1, so did a lap on it. Now, we weren't unusual in doing that, but what was a bit different was in Q1 we decided to do 2 new sets. So we actually did 3 runs with both drivers, a used and 2 new. That was a little bit, because we'd struggled the day before in the sprint qualifying, we wanted to make sure the drivers had time to understand what the car was doing, but it put us 1 set down to the others. So then when you finally get to Q3, we only had 1 remaining. Now, we did actually do a run on the medium tyre. We had seen it was pretty competitive the day before. We didn't think it was quicker, but for Lewis, actually, because the first run had gone so badly with the gust of wind, that medium was actually the time that he qualified on. But we used it because we weren't seeing a big single lap drop, so we weren't too worried about having that lap on the tyre come the race on Sunday.
While we didn't get it coming all together in Q3, was it encouraging seeing what we did do in Q2, that when the car is working, it's in the mix?
It was encouraging definitely at the time to see that lap time, but we know that there's a lot we need to work on with the balance of the car. And the reason that we can't do those laps every time we go out on new tyres is that the drivers are always fighting the balance, trying to get it balanced through all the different corner speed ranges. And until we fix that, it's definitely going to be hard for them to sort of reliably deliver those sort of near perfect laps when it absolutely matters. So yes, it was quick, but fundamentally you've got to look at really where the average performance of the car is, and we know that there's a lot of work that we need to do there.
So, Shov, why was there such a deficit in our straight line speed that made it so difficult for us to overtake in the DRS zones?
Well, this is specific really to the sprint race. So in the sprint race, we'd gone in on a bigger wing level. The reason we'd done that was because that wing should have been quicker in qualifying. There are 3 DRS zones in Miami, so you actually tend to be quicker with a big wing when you've got a lot of DRS running, because you get the benefit of the grip in the corners, and then you can lose the drag when you get onto the straights. Now, that would have been great if we qualified well, but unfortunately we didn't. So both cars were then stuck with a big wing in races that were really dominated by traffic, because the early part of the DRS zone, or the early part of the straight rather, is without the DRS. It makes it very hard to stay in the tow and get close enough to overtake when the DRS is active. Now, for the main race, the main qualifying, we then dropped down to a more usable wing level, a lighter wing, and that was basically meant that overtaking was more realistic and more easy.
A question from our community on Facebook. Why did we bring Lewis in so early on the hard tyres?
The main reason that we brought him in was there was a group of midfield cars that were creeping into our window, and if we'd stayed out, they would have undercut us. Now, at the time, Lewis was not happy with the grip on the hard tyre. He was sliding around a lot, struggling with the car. What we didn't know was that he would have been much quicker on the medium, and we saw that in the final stint when he was able to pressure one of the Red Bulls. So if we'd known that he was going to be so much happier on the medium, we would have probably risked getting undercut to allow us to extend. And what we would have certainly done was, if we knew that there was going to be a safety car, we would have stayed out and he could have taken the benefits. But really, it was just because there were a number of cars in this group. You give up a lot of places to try and stay out a bit longer and offset further on the tyres.
Can you tell us a bit more about the split strategy on both of the cars with their starting tyre?
Yeah, we run a lot of simulations overnight. And what we could see was that the highest probability of a good result, and for us that would have been finishing 4th or 5th, maybe 3rd, those were all coming about from a hard tyre start. And the reason is the hard tyre allows you to run longer, to offset, and to benefit from things like a safety car where you can suddenly gain track position over those that have already stopped. So we didn't want to do it with both cars because it's a bit of a case of putting all your eggs in one basket, and it's logical to put the car behind on the harder tyre because they're going to be the ones that are going longer. Otherwise you end up with a scenario where you invert your cars. Now, as it happened, that occurred on the start anyway, but that was the reason that it's just there were the upside gains from that seemed to be a bit better. There are risks with the hard tyre off the line, and we just wanted to cover both bases. And then the other reality for us in the race was there wasn't a lot of threat from behind. So you could almost do that for free, and still your worst case scenario is that you finish in the same places.
Why was George unable to overtake Tsunoda?
Put simply, we weren't quick enough, but it was specifically that hard tyre. So Lewis had struggled with it in the first stint. We put it on George in the second stint. He found very much the same problem. We had reasonable temperature. It was just that because it has low grip, the car balance window gets a bit bigger. There's more understeer in the low speed. There was more oversteer, and he was just sliding around on it. So we know that we need to get on top of the car balance. That's going to come from further developments in terms of the handling characteristics of the car. We've tried for a number of races to fix it with setup changes, and we can't seem to do enough to influence it that way. If we improve that, we should then have good performance across all tyres, but it did seem to be very specific to that hard compound.
A question from our fans at Weibo. Would Lewis have been able to overtake Perez after the safety car if he hadn't locked up?
The issue was that we looked to be a little bit quicker than Sergio in that final stint. We could stay with him. Lewis was having to push the tyres very hard to stay there. But Red Bull were running a smaller rear wing than us. They can do that, and they've still got good pace in the corners. And that meant that it was very, very hard to actually get the gains on the straights that we would have needed to make the pass. So encouraging that we were able to pressure him and race him, but we're not quite quick enough to overtake them when you're actually on the same compound and the same age tyre. We just haven't got the pace to do that.
How significant are the Imola upgrades, and did the Miami upgrades work as intended?
We managed to pull forward about half of our update kit to Miami, and then the other half is going to arrive in Imola. And we're working very hard on the future races to try and bring developments to them as well. Did it work as expected? Yes, it all looks like it's delivering the performance that we were hoping for from the floor. The issue at the moment is everyone else is developing their cars. So you saw McLaren with a big package, and they look to have moved forward. And also the handling issues that the drivers are having to battle with are making it hard to really see all that performance as a straight sort of step forward. What we tend to find is that the car from session to session can behave quite differently, and until we get on top of that, we're always going to blunt the benefit that we can get from these type of updates. But after the last few races, we've got now a very clear idea of what we need to do to the car to get it handling a bit more easily for the drivers, making sure it goes where they want it to go when they're on those important qualifying laps. And we've also got quite a good sort of thread of updates that'll be coming over the next 3 or 4 races. So a lot of hard work going on, but hopefully we will start to see the fruits of that soon.
So looking beyond Imola, how are we feeling about the tracks coming up next? And are there any specific tracks that we think are better suited to us?
Well, we've got Monaco, Montreal, and then Barcelona. So you've got 2 circuits that are predominantly low-speed corners. Certainly Montreal, it's all low speed. And then you've got Barcelona, which with its new layout, where they've removed the chicane, is an extremely fast circuit. So a lot of mid-speed and very, very, very high-speed corners. So quite a range for us to deal with. So we're not expecting we're going to go to Monaco and suddenly be looking extremely quick. But what you can find is that the subtle differences in those tracks can expose those weaknesses a little bit less. So, if you took somewhere like Montreal, you're only dealing with one speed range, it can be a bit easier to get the car in the window. So we'll do all the normal preparation work, but fundamentally we need to develop our way out of this problem by bringing performance updates to the car. That's what we're working on. And then at the track, we'll just try and optimize what we've got as best we can, pick up as many points as we can in the meantime. So it's really those two areas that we're working on simultaneously.